Our next speaker is Hilda. So, Hilda, do you want to talk about the work you do and why it's important for you to keep talking about mental health?
Yeah, sure. I'm a mindset and wellbeing coach. And previous to that, I worked for a number of different organizations as a communications director and a journalist. I came to the UK when I was 5 years old, and I spoke Russian because my mother was Russian, and that was my first experience of losing my voice. I had to learn a different language. It took me about 6 months to learn English, and it felt like one of my senses had gone. I remember just looking around the room, and nobody could understand me, and I couldn't understand them when I was 5 at this new school. And I just thought they were all playing this big joke on me. And eventually, within maybe a few minutes, the joke would stop, and everybody would start speaking my language. But that just didn't happen, and it was very scary. But I at that age, your brain is very malleable and you can pick up languages very fast. And I know for sure that as you grow up bilingual, you become an empath because you can relate to another culture. And then I found my voice in English and started talking a lot. And I remember when I was 8 years old, my teacher made me stand on a chair and because for talking and told me to be quiet for a couple of minutes. So I had to stand on this chair in front of the rest of the class, which is obviously quite humiliating and embarrassing. And so again, I found my voice, not being accepted. We grew up in a rural community in Gloucestershire, and my father was from the Caribbean. He was from a country called Guyana, which was in South America, but had a Caribbean culture. And we were the only sort of brown skinned people in our village. And I just had this tremendous sense of isolation. It felt like being an alien. And I just found it really, really difficult to express what I was feeling. And that's why I talk, because I want people who are really isolated and feel that they're all alone to know that they're not all alone, and they need to speak and they need to connect with others, and that there is strength in talking, and that there's strength in asking for help. I very much grew up in a family that was it's not cool to ask for help. It's very strong to do everything yourself and to just struggle on through and get through it, and it's character building and all the rest of it. And I realized as I did that, I was suppressing asking for help, and it caught up with me when I got older. And when I was in my 20s, I remember I just wouldn't ask for help. And I was in my second job working for a children's charity, and the year went by, and was doing quite a lot of interviews with people who'd gone through trauma, and just not talking about it to anybody apart from to my partner at home, who was actually away a lot of the time for his job. And I just started crying about a year of doing this job. I started crying in the toilets, and somebody found me, and it was just, she said, you need to talk. And that's when I realized, it's really unhealthy to bottle things in. So if this gives people hope, listening out there, please do find somebody that you can trust and just let it out. There's no shame at all. That was one of the factors that stopped me from speaking out, because I came from a family where there was domestic violence. My father was under a lot of pressure, and he always thought he was going to lose his job. We grew up with not very much money, and all those limiting beliefs were passed on. And there was this huge shame about sort of talking about our situation. And so my outlet was writing, and that's what I think saved me, because I just was always writing things out that were in my head. So that was kind of my way of talking. And when I was working as a communications director, I would write things, media releases and sound bites and quotes, and that was my way of speaking. And I would do interviews, and I would just memorize all these sound bites, and that was my way of communicating. But I felt that there was it was kind of masking as well to some extent, because it wasn't a flow of communication. It was very much sort of memorized, and kind of sometimes it felt like it was scripted and it wasn't spontaneous. And then when I started creative writing after I had my children, because I wanted to write for them, and I started writing children's picture books, the creative flow came out. And then when I wrote my memoir, and I highly recommend anybody who's gone through difficult times to write a story of their life, or fiction. You can fictionalize it; doesn't have to be non-fiction. And people started to accept what they read and said, "I loved your book." That's when the shame completely went and the guilt completely went, and I started speaking out to bigger and bigger audiences, and moved from a room of 10 people to last year I spoke in front of approximately 20,000 people in India. So that's a bit of my journey. And so, yeah, I specialize in helping people get past their limiting beliefs.
Thank you, Hilda. That was amazing to hear the work you're doing and how you're changing the conversation around mental health. So thank you very much.